This video is going to be PG rated, so if you're watching this with young children, know that I am not going to be explicit in any of my wording. Guys, making this video was exhausting. I wanted to be sure to dig deep enough to really be fair and thoughtful, but digging into anything that is Epstein file related is unpleasant, tiring. Okay, so what do our two U.S. Senate candidates, Sherrod and Jon Husted, think, and what have they done about this Epstein Files stuff? And it does not escape my attentions that both candidates have campaign ads that point fingers at each other about Epstein associations.
Jon Husted isn't just caught up in Epstein's web. He's taken more money from Epstein's associates than anyone in Congress.
More than $100,000 before voting against the release of the Epstein Files.
He doesn't represent us.
32 years in D.C. made Sherrod Brown a liar. The truth? Jon Husted voted to release the Epstein Files, while Senator Brown took $100,000 from Epstein associates.
So this is my version of a brief timeline. That way we can be on the same page when I'm blabbering on about how all of our candidates relate to this stuff. I took a timeline and I put it into AI and asked it to help make it all fit on one screen. And so follow the timeline like you're reading a book, left to right, line by line, top to bottom. And so everything here is really notable, but I'm going to point out to you the notable things in looking at our two Senate candidates. So the first notable thing is January 2024, many Epstein files were publicly released. Many of them were already publicly available, but many more became publicly released. In 2024, Donald Trump campaigned for a second presidential term, promising to release all of the Epstein files. In July of 2025, Jeffrey Epstein co-conspirator Les Wexner makes the maximum allowed donation of $3,500 to Jon Husted's Senate campaign. Wexner's involvement with Epstein was not yet publicly known at that time, July 2025. Also in July 2025, Jon Husted was a lead sponsor of the Enhancing Detection of Human Trafficking Act. So I have a link to that in the video description. It's basically making it easier to see when human trafficking is happening. In September 2025, Senator Chuck Schumer, he wanted to attach an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, to force Attorney General Pam Bondi to make Epstein files publicly available. So the whole National Defense Authorization Act is the big thing that was happening, and Senator Chuck Schumer tried to attach this little amendment onto the side saying, hey, and also Attorney General Pam Bondi, you have to make the Epstein files publicly available. So both Ohio Senators Jon Husted and Bernie Moreno both voted yes to tabling the amendment. So tabling an amendment means we're putting it down on the table and we're not doing it. So Jon Husted and Bernie Moreno both voted to kill that amendment and to not force the Epstein files to be released. 2 months later, in November of 2025, the U.S. House voted 427-1 to release the Epstein files. That one, like who was that did not vote to release the Epstein files? I have links in the video description to who that was and what their thinking was. And so after something goes to the House and passes, it goes to the Senate. And in this case, the entire U.S. Senate voted unanimously to release the Epstein Files. So that includes Jon Husted and Bernie Moreno. They both voted yes, release the files. And then, as is what happens, it goes to the president, and Donald Trump signed the legislation. So this is the Epstein File Transparency Act. In February 2026, some Epstein files that came out publicly revealed that Les Wexner knew Epstein, hired Epstein to be his financial manager for many years, was listed in a 2019 FBI document as a, quote, co-conspirator of Epstein's. And so Les Wexner was listed in the Epstein files over 1,300 times. And so who is Les Wexner, right? He is the founder and former CEO of L Brands, which meant nothing to me until I realized L Brands. So underneath that, that's the umbrella for The Limited, Victoria's Secret, Bath & Body Works, Abercrombie & Fitch. So Les Wexner is the founder and former CEO of all that. And he is based in Ohio, Les Wexner. So he was found to be in the Epstein files over 1,300 times. And notable to our discussion here, Senator Jon Husted had received over many years $118,000 in campaign contributions from Les Wexner. In that same month, February 2026, Jon Husted donated $34,000 of the remaining donations from Les Wexner to this Columbus-based nonprofit charity, Freedom à la Carte. So that is in the video description if you want to know who they are. Okay, so the Justice Department has indicated that it's done releasing any more Epstein files. The redactions that have been done or files not released, they have said is to protect the identity of victims, prevent the dissemination of inappropriate imagery, protect ongoing criminal investigations, and safeguard information critical to national security. So pause the video if you want to stare at this timeline a little bit longer. And I also have several links in the video description with other timelines that have other details. So lots of links if you want to go look at those. Okay, so let's break down all this stuff in relation to our boys, Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted, and what they have said or done about all this jazz. So here is our chart that we're going to be working with. And so starting up at the top, for Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted both, my first question was, are either of them actually in the Epstein files and or done Epstein-like crimes? No and no. Whew, okay, so and so the next question then is, should the Epstein files be released? So Sherrod Brown has been a solid yes on this. Yes, they absolutely should be. Jon Husted is a no and then a yes. So this is one of the things in the campaign ads, and here is what the deal is. We just went over it in the timeline, but let me point it out to you more specifically. So should the Epstein files be released? So back up here in September of 2025, Senator Schumer attached an amendment to this bigger Defense Authorization Act. And this little amendment said, hey, we're forcing Pam Bondi to make the Epstein files publicly available. And Jon Husted said, no, he voted yes to tabling the amendment. So again, he voted yes to saying no to the amendment. So this kills the amendment, and it does not force the Epstein files to be released. So he said no, he did not want the Epstein files to be released. 2 months later, in November 2025, when the Epstein File Transparency Act came to the Senate, Jon Husted voted yes, release the Epstein files. So that is what those campaign ads are talking about, and that is what the deal is here. There was a no, he voted, and then 2 months later, a yes. I have links in the video description if you want to hear why he voted no and then yes, or if you want more information on that. That's should the Epstein files be released. But now, where we stand now, the Justice Department has said they are done releasing any more files, but a whole lot of people are like, we don't have everything yet, though. So my third question, should all of the Epstein files be released, as well as removing redactions? So a lot of the files, if you've seen, are very heavily redacted. That's the black, looks like black marker going through lots and lots and lots of stuff. And so Sherrod Brown is a yes. Release all of the Epstein files, please, and remove all of those redactions. One exception, the names of victims should continue to be redacted. Okay, Jon Husted, I've given a sort of. Should all of the Epstein files be released as well as removing redactions? The reason I have sort of is like, well, yeah, but just like Sherrod Brown, he thinks victim names should still be redacted. So they agree on that. Jon Husted, though, also thinks that witnesses, those names should be redacted, as well as non-criminal associates. Those should be redacted. So if somebody is mentioned in an Epstein email or something that's totally unrelated to him, maybe I'm making this up. Maybe Jeffrey Epstein writes an email and says like, hey, I watched the Jon Stewart show tonight. Jon Stewart is now going to show up in the Epstein files. But it doesn't mean he's involved. It just means he was sort of tangentially mentioned. But Jon Husted wants those kinds of names, all of those kinds of names, redacted as well. So they both want all the files released, but there's a little bit of a nuanced difference in how much they want redacted or not. Okay, so for the next thing is, have either of our candidates had campaign contributions from people mentioned in the Epstein files? Yes and yes. And I know this is another piece of the puzzle in relation to the advertisements that we're all getting, right? How much money from notable Epstein file people? When? Who? Like, let's dig into this. Campaign contributions from Epstein file people. So we're going to start with Sherrod Brown. So I have listed these 4 people, and they're listed under both Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted, just for comparison's sake, I guess. And the order is important here. The person listed at the top, Les Wexner, is mentioned the most in the Epstein files of all these people, and Barry Diller at the bottom is mentioned the least of these 4 people. And also, coincidentally or not, I don't know, the name at the top, Les Wexner, has given the most money to a campaign, and Barry Diller at the bottom is given the least. So let's dig into, like, who are these people? What does this mean? So for Sherrod Brown, has he gotten any money from Les Wexner? No. We'll talk about Les Wexner more in a minute when we get to Jon Husted. But okay, so who are these next 3 people? So Sherrod Brown has had campaign contributions from about 14 people who have been mentioned in the Epstein files. So I dug into these people and this stuff, and this is... And so it looks like 11 or 12 of the people that were mentioned in the Epstein files that gave money to Sherrod Brown, it looks like about 11 or 12 of them is sort of in that tangential kind of way, like, oh, I wonder if we can get so-and-so to perform at this event, or, oh, hey, did you catch the Jon Stewart show last night? Like that kind of thing, very tangential. So not like conspiratorial or associate type things. So I dropped most of those people. So there are 3 people who have given money to previous Sherrod Brown campaigns that are in the Epstein files in a somewhat more notable way. So the first is Larry Summers, then Abigail Wexner, and then lastly Barry Diller. And I went back and forth on whether to include Barry Diller. So I'm going to show you this chart. So this is those same 4 people across the top, but a little bit more broken down information about them, because I thought it might be helpful to you. So we're going to start with Larry Summers. So Larry Summers was mentioned in the Epstein files hundreds of times. And his mentioning in the Epstein Files was from 2011 to 2019. And how is he mentioned in the Epstein Files, right? He became backup executor to Epstein's finances, which is kind of a big deal in my opinion. And there was a lot of social, personal emails between Larry Summers and Jeffrey Epstein. So Larry Summers, also I forgot to mention, he is the former Treasury Secretary and Harvard University president. And these hundreds of direct emails between him and Epstein were related to advice and ideas. Like Summers would ask Epstein for advice and ideas regarding Harvard and his personal relationships. He had dinner and meals dozens of times with Epstein. So he might be an Epstein associate, ? But not like a co-conspirator. But I have a lot of links in the video description so you can look into Larry Summers more and kind of make your own assessment there. And so he, in 2024 to 2025, gave $10,300 to Sherrod Brown. Okay, so the next person down who donated money to Sherrod Brown's campaign, who is in the Epstein Files, is Abigail Wexner. So she was mentioned less than 100 times in the Epstein Files. Her active years in the Epstein Files, if you will, was pretty much just 2007. And what the deal was with her, so Abigail Wexner is the wife of Les Wexner, then and now. And I'll talk more about Les Wexner in a moment. So she's been Les's wife since the 1990s. And somewhere in that ballpark, Jeffrey Epstein started managing the Wexners' money. Okay. And then in 2007, things started happening with Epstein legally. Abigail Wexner took back the Wexners' finances. She's like, I'm going to be in control of our finances again. And so then as she's going through all their financial records since Epstein had been in charge of them, she learns that Epstein had stolen over $200 million from the Wexners, which is a number that is hard for my brain to understand. It's a big number. Her name in the Epstein Files is mostly in 2007 when she took over their finances again, the Wexner finances, found that Epstein had stolen all this money from them. And so she is named in draft emails that Epstein wrote to himself, where he complained that Abigail Wexner was making, quote, unfair, aggressive, and false accusations against him when she was doing this 2007 audit of her finances. And so she gave money to Sherrod Brown, $10,200, over the course of 2011 to 2017. Okay, and then the last name, and I kind of went back and forth on whether to even include this guy, someone who gave money to Sherrod Brown that is in the Epstein Files, is Barry Diller. Barry Diller, he's in the Epstein Files about 7 times, and this was all in 2003. He's mentioned in the Epstein Files mostly as he's on like a social list of Epstein's, but it's very weak. Like he's very weakly on this social list. He doesn't seem to be, he's certainly not a co-conspirator. He doesn't really seem to be an associate either. His name, he's a media executive, Barry Diller, and his name appears in flight logs and contact lists though. It sounds like, and I got links in the video description so you can kind of look into Barry Diller and what the deal is there. He claims that he has been to the island and it was only once, and he said he may be the only person who ever went to the island just to look at architecture. So again, I'll let you click in the video description and learn more about him if you'd like. So he's in the Epstein Files a little bit in 2003, kind of weekly, but I don't know. You click around, decide for yourself. And so he gave Sherrod Brown money in 2018, and he gave $5,400. Okay, so coming back up here now to our big table, that concludes the people in the Epstein Files who have given money to Sherrod Brown. And again, I have a lot of links in the video description, so if you want to know who the rest of those maybe like 10 people are that gave money to Sherrod Brown but are in the Epstein Files, but I deemed those people to be so tangentially in there. You can look into that, though, to make more assessments for yourself. Okay, so now let's flip over to the Jon Husted side of things. So has he had any campaign contributions from people mentioned in the Epstein Files? Yes. So not the Larry Summers, Abigail Wexner, Barry Diller. Those were all zeros. His only one that I can find is Les Wexner. You know, and I didn't mention, but about the last 3 people that contributed to Sherrod Brown and this one guy here contributing to Jon Husted, none of these people have been charged with any crimes. And I feel like that's somehow notable to say. Okay, so looking at our little mini table now. So Les Wexner here on the way left. So he is in the Epstein Files over 1,300 times. So that's quite a lot more than the other people that we're looking at, right? And he is mentioned a 2019 FBI list of co-conspirators. Les Wexner is on that list. His active years with Epstein, like being in the Epstein Files, is from the 1980s all the way through 2007. Then there was like a break, and then 2008. And he contributed $117,000 to Jon Husted's campaigns from 2001 all the way to 2025. And so looking a little more into this guy, so Les Wexner, if you don't know this name, and I have to be honest, I didn't, he is the richest man in Ohio. He has the most expensive home in Ohio. A couple buildings are named after him at the Ohio State University. And again, he is mentioned more than 1,300 times in the Epstein Files. It looks like Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein were business associates and friends from the 1980s until 2007. Their relationship stopped in 2007. And again, this was when legally things for Epstein were happening. And this is also when, if you'll remember, Abigail Wexner, Les Wexner's wife, took back over the Wexner finances, found that Epstein stole $200 million from them. And so she was cranky about that. And Epstein didn't appreciate her attitude. And so this is possibly also part of this relationship between Les Wexner and Epstein stopping in 2007. Seemed like they started emailing again with each other in 2008. Les Wexner testified before a House Oversight Committee somewhat recently. And during a break, one of the committee members said, quote, "There is no single person that was more involved in providing Jeffrey Epstein with the financial support to commit his crimes than Les Wexner. There would be no Epstein Island, there'd be no Epstein plane, there'd be no money to do the crimes that he did." We're keeping it PG, people. So, okay. That all being said, though, Les Wexner has said that he has never been unfaithful to his wife. He never hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. He was never involved with any of this Epstein criminal stuff. He said their relationship was only financial/business. And, I can't give you an exact quote, but he said something akin to, "I was duped by the biggest con man ever." And so that is Les Wexner's response to all of this. And so where does the truth lie? Well, I'm going to have you decide that for yourself. Lots of links, though, in the video description to the Les Wexner piece of this puzzle as well. And so then going to our little mini table, here are all of the people that are notable that were in the Epstein Files that gave money, campaign contributions to Sherrod Brown or Jon Husted over the years. And now looking back at our big table again, and so the campaign ads talking about either of our candidates taking money from Epstein associates and whatnot. This is what I found to be the truth of the matter. They both have. With Sherrod Brown, it's much smaller amounts of money, and I don't know if Barry Diller belongs on this list or not as being a notable Epstein file person. Abigail Wexner and Larry Summers are somewhat notable, but they are at most associates of Jeffrey Epstein's. And then if you go over to the other side with Les Wexner, that's quite a larger amount of money, and he is listed in the Epstein files, not tangentially, not as an associate, but as a co-conspirator with Epstein. And so then I also was kind of curious, did Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted know that they were receiving contributions from Epstein file people? Yes, it appears that they did both know. And what I mean is, Sherrod Brown knew Larry Summers, Abigail Wexner, Barry Diller gave him money. Because I believe these people gave the maximum amount that you can give as an individual contributor or donor. And so Sherrod Brown knew. Did he know that they were going to be in the Epstein files and they were involved with Jeffrey Epstein and all these things with Epstein? I don't know. And then did Jon Husted know that Les Wexner gave him all that money over those years? Yes. Did he know that Les Wexner was involved with Jeffrey Epstein, that he was doing bad things with Jeffrey Epstein, purportedly? I don't know. I don't know, if either of our candidates knew anything more deeply or not. I don't know. Okay, so that is our table and our information on Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted involving Epstein file stuff. Should the Epstein files be released? Are they in the Epstein files? And then also campaign contributions coming from Epstein file people. How involved are those Epstein file people with Epstein? So all that information is here now. And so the campaign ads that both of our candidates have pointing fingers at each other related to Epstein file stuff. Are they true or false? A little bit of both. But you can see it's a little bit nuanced, and now you know the nuance. Here's the information, so do with that what you will. In the video description, again, I have lots of links related to all this Epstein file stuff with Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted. I also have all these links to checking your Ohio voter registration, registering to vote in Ohio, voting dates, how do you vote early, where do you vote early, what day do you vote for the general election in person, just all the info. Check out the video description for all of that. About all this Epstein file stuff with our two candidates, I don't know what to say, but you've got the info now anyways.